This episode of the Managing Madrid Podcast is brought to you by the Beverly Hilton. This summer, dive into the Beverly Hilton's iconic past and present, from golden hour and 1950s inspired cocktails to live music, exclusive poolside events and partnerships. This is the summer that you've been waiting for. Follow in the footsteps of Hollywood's elite and become part of their legacy when you book your summer stay at the Beverly Hilton, which is what you should be doing if you're traveling to Los Angeles for Real Madrid's preseason tour. Book your stay at the Beverly Hilton. And on that note, we just announced details for our Dallas podcast. So you can book your spot to our Dallas and Houston shows by clicking the link in the show notes. And we're hoping to have details for our Los Angeles podcast shortly, hopefully this week. Fingers crossed. We're working on it diligently. Coming up is a massive podcast about everything. I don't know how else to briefly summarize it. It's over 2 hours. It's about everything and everything under the sun. Where will Carlo Ancelotti start Jude Bellingham? Who misses out? Luka Modric's contract extension, what that means for everyone. Every one of the other 30 midfielders that Real Madrid has. Also, Kylian Mbappe. At what point will Real Madrid find out if they will or won't sign him? And what options will that leave late in the transfer window if that's what it goes to? Should Real Madrid invest in a right winger? And a lot more on Luka Modric and a ton about Saudi Arabian money and how it's changing the football landscape. Over 2 hours of discussion. Good luck. Enjoy it. I think you'll enjoy it. I really enjoyed talking about it. The guests were fantastic. The dialogue was awesome. It flew by, so hopefully you will enjoy it. Thanks for keeping it locked on Managing Madrid, both in podcast and written form as always, and enjoy the show.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Hello and welcome to a Monday edition of the Managing Madrid Podcast. I'm your host, Kiyan Sobhani. I am joined by co-founder of StatsBomb, Ali Elfakharany, and also Siddharth Ramsundar joining us from Mars on the Red Planet. He's back. We are doing, gentlemen, is this the second or third time we've done this trifecta?
Third or maybe even fourth?
I believe it's third.
Third. We go into just kind of a deep dive on everything on these podcasts. It's a little bit unscripted, but it touches on analytics, transfers, squad building, and wherever else the conversation goes. And I'm pretty interested to dive in deep into a variety of topics with you guys today. We have the Modric renewal, which came in this morning. Real Madrid announced it. And that was really interesting because now Real Madrid have 20 midfielders in the squad. So how that gets juggled, I'm not sure. Luka Modric also turned down, according to Fabrizio Romano, one of the most lucrative offers in football history from Saudi Arabia. And he said no to it, which takes us into a different angle too to discuss Saudi Arabian money and what that means for football. And we'll probably discuss, you know who, Kylian Mbappe at some point, and the striker situation and all that stuff. Ali, I did want to ask you this because the last time we did a podcast, I remember clearly that it was around a time where Real Madrid weren't playing well. I think it was January or so, sometime in the winter time. And you gave Real Madrid fans some optimism. Everyone was like just down on the season, down on everything. Benzema wasn't performing. It just didn't seem to click that well. And after the podcast, like, we feel better after listening to this. Thank you. And it's ironic because you're the one who gave the Real Madrid fans the most optimism, and you're a culé. And I'm going to ask you this, I guess, to start. Real Madrid fans are freaking out a little bit right now because we don't know what's going to happen with this Mbappe situation. Jose Lu is a big downgrade from Karim Benzema. Should Real Madrid fans be optimistic right now or pessimistic?
No, I definitely think a lot of optimism is where I would be at looking at the squad. I think it has been tremendous to watch this team rebuild in real time. and compete simultaneously. So the golden generation is kind of aged out over the last 3 years, 4 years. Whenever you want to kind of mark it as post-prime, maybe from Cristiano's exits all the way up to, I think we still have Kroos and Modric from that golden generation. And in the meantime, I think they've done tremendous work in the scouting department, and the transfer window has been great. They've gotten their average age down, and in the meantime, they've won a couple of La Ligas and a Champions League to boot. So I think the rebuild is kind of entering its end stage almost, right? Like, I think people are excited that this team should start kicking off and being. I don't know how you can be more in contention when you're La Liga champions last year, etc. But like a more dominant force, right? As these players reach peak age, whether the young central defenders, Militao, etc., whether the new look midfield, which we'll talk about. I think it's been a tremendous rebuild with not a tremendous amount of investment, right? Like, I think they've gotten their sales right and their timing of their sales right, whether that's Cristiano and Casemiro. So I would be quite optimistic. I know attackers take all the glory, and obviously Kylian is probably the best player in the world right now. But it's not the end of the world at all if it's this year, next year, the year after. I think there's a lot of positivity in the squad building that, as a Barcelona fan, I'm pessimistic, I think, is the answer. And so I quite like the squad. I quite like the makeup of the squad. And just one final note, I think Real Madrid have shown tremendous patience, and kind of like, if their 10 out of 10 player isn't there, they will go get a 7 out of 10 player, right? Instead of like trying to make a star into a superstar. Like, they'll go get a bridge to that solution. So instead of okay, we can't have Mbappe now, should we try to spend, I don't know, 70, 80 million on Havertz and make him the main guy? Or should we just get a average La Liga striker, above average La Liga striker, and bridge the gap? And so that patience and like, we only go for superstars has mostly worked out, I think, for them over the last few years. And I quite like where the squad is, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, the squad's in a great place. There's no doubt. I mean, really, I don't see a need to retain someone like Modric in that scenario with so many great players available. I understand why you play him. I think the main thing with retaining Modric, you wonder is there a chance he's starting a big game in March or April next year? And I think previous years, last year we won, so I'm not going to say he shouldn't be starting in April next year. But this is the first year I'm saying if he starts in April next year, something's wrong. Like, the whole club's process. If it's so good to the point where you're preserving your old players and not pushing them out when it matters, I think it's hurting the team. And, I'm sure he's going to go and take a 2-year, 300 million deal to join Saudi Arabia next summer. And I'm happy for him to stick around. I just hope we don't start him. I think even if he has the mental aspect of the game, I'm at the point where I'd rather see Jude make mistakes and play over him.
I think the Modric... Go ahead, Ali.
The Modric stuff is hard, right? Like, you don't know what percent of it is. They value his presence in the dressing room, and like, I don't know. Has he talked about wanting to go into coaching? Or like, I don't know. Just from a squad building perspective, I agree with all of you, right? Like, you have enough midfielders, and he's been fine and everything, but like, you would rather see the young guys play. But you never know. You never know with that kind of stuff, like individually, what the politics and dynamics of that specific decision is. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. If he ends up taking too many minutes, I think fans have a right to complain. But I think it's just stuff we don't have access to, that kind of information. What is he like in the dressing room? Do they need him? Maybe he's wants to go into coaching. Maybe he wants to stay in Madrid for another year. Who knows?
Yeah, I think some combo of all those things will be on the table. And, I think you see the data. So for you, Real's transfer strategy looks almost perfect. And whenever I'm praising Real's transfer strategy, it's usually with looking at the data, just looking at statistics. What age are they signing players at? What are they outliers? And we're just signing outliers at a young age. But where would you go as far as, would you wait for Mbappe if he's going for one more year? That's a situation. What would you go for? Would you go for Harry Kane? Obviously, I wouldn't go Kai Havertz, but that's been solved, thankfully. Mikel Arteta is the one who took that on board.
Kiyan, I'd love to hear I haven't heard your view on this. What's the level of patience you have on this one?
Oof. I mean, the thing, like you said earlier in the podcast, that if you're waiting for the superstar like Mbappe, you don't get him, and you go into next year with like the 7 out of 10 instead of the 10 out of 10. To me, it's not to sound too dramatic, because this is going to sound really dramatic, regardless of what my tone sounds like. But like right now, our summer off season, I would grade it like it's like a kind of like a 6 out of 10. And like the difference between getting Mbappe or not this summer, like it goes from, it would be a 10 out of 10 summer to like a 6 out of 10. Like it's a huge jump if you get Mbappe. Next summer, and this is the part that's going to sound dramatic, the difference between getting Mbappe and starting Joselu as your striker next season, I think is somewhere between trophyless and treble. Like, because if you put Mbappe on a team with Bellingham and Camavinga and Vinicius Jr. and all these guys on paper, like you got Fran Garcia coming over to help with the left back spot when Ferland Mendy can't play, freeing up Camavinga. Like Bellingham's an absolute freak, generational talent. We got Courtois. We got we're so set in so many positions apart from right back. It's a truly incredible squad if you get Mbappe. And if you don't, and you go from that and not only losing Benzema, but also just downgrading to Joselu, I don't know how much patience Real Madrid's fans have for a season like that. Because there's it's going to be hard to find goals in that situation. So that worries me. And I just don't know who Kai Havertz is not, like, for that price that Chelsea are trying to rake out of Manchester United, it seems. I don't know if he's worth it. I mean, he's not going to fill in that many goals. So if you go in with splashing that much money on Kai Havertz, seems like unideal for me, because it would mean that you have to get more goals from Rodrigo. You need Vinicius to keep progressing in the goal scoring department. You probably need more. You need goals from Bellingham from midfield. Is that going to be enough? And the other question I have, I guess, is can Kane and Mbappe exist? And the reason I ask that is not because I'd expect Real Madrid to get both of them this summer. The reason I ask that is because if you miss out on Mbappe, would it make sense to go all in on Kane this summer and also get Mbappe next summer? And would that work, Vinicius, Kane, and Mbappe up front? I believe it will. I have a lot of questions. And the thing is, like you said off air, Ali, you kind of wait until August when the transfer window is wrapping up to kind of make these decisions. It's really hard to talk about this now. Like, people are talking about, what does it mean? Like, is Bellingham and Camavinga going to be benched next season for Modric, Kroos? And there's like a little bit of an anxiety about this. And I also think that with Modric and Kroos staying and Ancelotti loving starting those two because he has so much trust in those. Like, some people are like, hey guys, let's think about it this way. If Modric and Kroos are starting next season, maybe it means they are playing at such a high level that they should be starting. And that's fine to think of it that way. But I don't think Ancelotti has always been playing people based on a meritocracy. And that so worries me a little bit. I also think, for the reason alone that, in my opinion, Camavinga and Bellingham are undroppable players. Camavinga because of what he's done. Bellingham not because of what he's done at Real Madrid, obviously. It might be a premature statement, but because of who he is as a profile, the name, and how great he is. I think those two have to be on the field. And if Modric and Kroos have to play as well in Ancelotti's mind, it probably means that all four of them might play. And you have Bellingham in an attacking midfielder role in either a diamond or a free roaming role with Vinicius and another attacking player up front. I think that's a very realistic scenario that I see kind of unfolding for next season.
If I have to nitpick and maybe this isn't a nitpick, but like I think Real's transfer business has been top notch, right? But I do think there's a lack of flexibility, right? Like there's an obsession with kind of Kylian as the solution to the club's superstar problem, the attack, etc., etc. And I don't look. There's a marketing conversation to this. There's a we want the best player in the world conversation. That's non-football. There's a non-football side to this conversation. From a football perspective, I would have imagined a pivot by now in strategy. You go get a right wing and you try Rodrigo out to striker for a bit, or I would have imagined just more flexibility. Like, look at the midfield. You have all sorts of profiles, all sorts of flexibility. Same in the defense. This team could play. One of the reasons I really like the Bellingham signing is I think he's very much a very big physical presence and an off-ball threat and a presser. And this team could play a lot of different ways now, right? Like you have the kind of control type midfielders, and you have midfielders that can go end to end a lot more with Camavinga and Bellingham, and the same with your back line. There's a lot of flexibility there. Alaba, Rudiger, right? Very different profiles, and they play very different styles. And so it's funny that in attack they haven't had that flexibility. They haven't had that. It's superstar striker or bust. And I think, just personally, and this is my personal opinion, I would have gotten a little bored and pivoted. I don't want to waste years off people's. I don't want to waste years off of Cruz's prime, and I don't want to waste. In general, I don't think Real Madrid should be in the business of throwing away years, especially when the rebuild has gone so well everywhere else on the pitch. Right, like you rebuilt, the midfield has gone from you have 3 aging stars to maybe 3 young superstars in Tchouaméni, Camavinga, and Bellingham, with Fede on the bench or at the right wing spot or whatever. And so the rebuild has gone great everywhere. And I think personally it would be a shame to throw away a year or two. And then you never know with Mbappe, he changes his mind again, something happens. And just zooming out a little more even, I genuinely think he needs the club more than the club needs him at this point, right? I think it's very hard to find buyers for his wage package. It's very hard to go to England and compete because City already have their guy, and the rest of the teams probably can't afford Mbappe, and it's a very competitive environment. And then you're left with the La Liga giants, and one of them is basically broke, right, and definitely couldn't afford a Mbappe package right now. And so, what's the set of clubs that Kylian Mbappe can go to if he wants to be paid?
Al Hilal, Al Ittihad, Inter Miami.
Yeah, exactly. Even Inter Miami, I don't think that's actually true, right? And so
Newcastle.
Yeah, and not even. I don't think. It doesn't feel like that Newcastle project is going that way, right? I think they're going to build slowly and get some money in, and I think they're taking the FFP stuff semi-seriously in the beginning, at least, until they get a base of like Champions League money flowing, etc. And so you look around, and we talked about this last time. This is what's leading to these Premier League clubs starting to sell to each other, right? That's such a big trend of recent years. Like this Arsenal team, who are on the rise. They have 3 ex-City players and 4 ex-Chelsea players. That's unique. That's a weird dynamic, right? Like they have from Havertz to Jorginho to Zinchenko to Jesus. We're seeing a lot more of that. Sterling goes to Chelsea from City. And it's because these teams are the teams that have the money, and there's nowhere else to go. Like they can't move these players anywhere else, with Barcelona kind of very limited and Real Madrid being very patient. You're left with Bayern, Juve have fallen off a cliff financially and are in deep trouble, and so you're left with nothing, right? And so I think it's a difficult position to recruit for. You definitely don't want to take the wrong swing, so you don't want to buy a player for 60 million, hoping he's a superstar and miss out. There's also the elephant in the room is the fit stuff. I know you guys have talked about this a little. I'm in two minds here. I see the great players can play with everyone type stuff, whether it's Kane, Mbappe, whoever. Like if you're just talking from a profile perspective. I also see the argument that, look, guys, you have maybe the best left winger in the game in Vinicius. Just maximize him. Like get him someone to play off him. Like and just it's good enough, right? Like get a good right winger in, left-footed right winger, one of the harder spots to recruit for generally. But like there are profiles out there. And so I think I lean towards more I don't see it with the Kane, Mbappe, Vinny stuff. I can squint and see it with the Mbappe, Vinny stuff even. This is a lot of and look, a lot of this is personal preference, but like everything we've seen from Kylian Mbappe at PSG is like, I don't want to play striker. I don't want to play striker. Get me someone to play off. My best position is left half space, left wing.
Well, that's why I think it's going to be similar to Benzema Vinicius dynamic. Well, they'll kind of drift in and out, and I know he's going to have to, like, if he arrives either way. Like,
I agree. I agree.
It's going to have to be like an Mbappe Neymar kind of synergy. Again.
Like, I guess the question we're asking is, would you rather wait, get him next year, or would you rather a really good young 9 and a really good young right winger and like real rotation, right? Like, so you go out and you go grab Colomwani or someone younger than Kane. And the Kane stuff, I don't know about the personal preference stuff. It feels to me like he wants to break Shearer's record and stay in England. I have no clue. I've never met the guy, obviously, but like it feels like that's a personal goal of his that he wants to accomplish. And so, yeah, it's interesting. I think I would have pivoted by now, gotten a winger, a right wing, which has been a problem spot for a while now.
Pivot from Mbappe, you mean, and just change.
Yeah. I'd wait it out. If there's something going on this summer and we can, let's do it. And look, I'm not saying Kylian Mbappe is the best player in the world. Like I'm not trying to. I think that's clear. I think that's very obvious to me. I just think there are multiple ways to build a team, and waiting is doing a disservice a little bit. So I agree with you a little.
I think just where we're at, it's been 5 years, 6 years since the club's transfer strategy. They started pushing the narrative of we can't compete with City and PSG, but now this year there's Saudi Arabia paying transfer fees to Real Madrid for Benzema to get him at the age of 35 and pay him more money than Real have ever paid. So I think it's starting to get to the point where Real, even if they have money, they're going to go around telling people, hey, we have to compete with these richer teams, so we need to save it. And I think when you do go from being the richest team in the sport to maybe the 6th or 7th, it's a pretty big change. Like, you can't take for granted that your brand is going to last for decades. And so that's where I understand waiting for him. You know, maybe in 30 years, you don't exist if you spend your money the wrong way now. But if you play your chips right, you win a Champions League in 2 years, you need to stay relevant. And I see a club that's scared of losing relevance. I see a club that's scared that, hey, if we spend 100 million on Kane and he tanks like Hazard and we sign Mbappe, if they're just scared that they can't afford a Hazard mistake again. They're scared. They think every big signing needs to be Cristiano Ronaldo, where you sign him at 24 for a price and you sell him at 34 for the same price. And it's ridiculous. So from that standpoint, I think it's really a question of how much is the Saudi money going to change the game? Are they, with the Club World Cup coming in? And I think like 1 year ago, I saw that Club World Cup incorporating 32 teams. I'm like, that's stupid. Now I'm like, oh, Benzema playing against Man City. I can't wait. That's going to be fun. Like Benzema and N'Golo Kante and Cristiano Ronaldo at the Club World Cup. And then, if they expand it to the MLS, you have Leo Messi and Sergio Busquets. They're expanding the game in a direction and way where I can see why Real are especially scared. Like if they don't get Kylian, is Real ever going to be relevant? Are they ever going to be in queue for the next Mbappe or Haaland if they don't get him now? And I think that's where you have to go after him. And I also think that's where Mbappe himself is a lot more upset about playing for PSG than he lets on. Actually, if you go through the actual reporting, this is a player who basically realized I'm stupid if I don't take their money. But as soon as he took their money, within 6 weeks, he communicated to them he won't renew. He was upset that they didn't sign Lewandowski and Tchouaméni. Within a month, they promised him Lewandowski and Tchouaméni. And so this summer, he comes out and says, I'm not renewing because he wants to communicate to PSG that I don't like it here. That's his way of passive aggressively forcing his way out. And if Mbappe is doing all that for you, yes, you take his word again. I think the same thing I said last year, where even though he turned us down, you forgive him as soon as you get the opportunity, because this isn't a situation that we saw before. He's not turning us down to go to Barcelona. This isn't Luis Figo coming to us from Barcelona. Luis Figo didn't get offered like 20 to 30 times the money to go somewhere else. This is completely different. And I think when countries decide to get involved, you have to protect your brand. I've never run a brand where countries started threatening my place in whatever industry I'm in. But this is unprecedented. And I don't think we've seen an entity come into football with like 10 to 20x the money the way these Qataris or Abu Dhabi people or the Saudis are coming in. It's just a scale where you have to look at them, you have to acknowledge them, and you have to submit to what they're doing to the market. I just think pretending that Real would have not signed Kane if oil clubs didn't exist is different. Like if oil clubs don't exist, they pull trigger on Kane today, they sign Mbappe tomorrow. And I don't think they go after Vinny and Rodrigo, though. I think that's the main difference. We don't get Vinny Rodrigo. We go after Mane and Salah or Son in 2018.
You know what irks me about all this Saudi money is that they couldn't have just tossed some our way for Hazard. Like, that's how bad Hazard's stock fallen. Like, there was nothing we could do with him. Like, just at least we were so excited about Newcastle only because we're like, maybe someone will finally take Hazard off of our hands. But even then, no one took a gamble on him. So the Mbappe thing is fascinating to me because there is such a wide range of opinions among Real Madrid fans on him. You know, a lot of fans have been bringing up the video like, hey guys, just remember, maybe just want to refresh your memory, you absolute bipolar fans, that this video exists where, like, right after Kylian Mbappe rejected us, he's in the PSG stadium announcing that he's staying, and PSG fans are chanting "fuck Madrid," excuse my French, and he's smirking. And they're like, hey guys, you remember this? This is the guy you want to sign? This is the guy that disrespected us, right? The guy who's rejected us multiple times. And I think it's where I stand on it is that I just don't. I look at this in somewhat of a transactional manner, more of an emotional manner. Where what I see is that if you get him, I think it's very possible that even in like literally, if you like, let's say, I think if you get him this summer, I think it's very possible in like 2 years, there will be some drama of like, hey, is Mbappe going to stay? He wants a bigger contract again. He wants to go back and take PSG to the promised land. He was never able to. All that stuff, that there's going to be drama. I guarantee it. It's going to be. And my question is always, how much do you care about the cost benefit analysis of that with the trophies he would bring, the goals he would bring, how unstoppable that offense with Vinicius would be? Do you care about that baggage and that drama enough? And I brought up the example last week to Lucas, like, you know, there were moments where Cristiano Ronaldo was like, I'm not happy in public. Like there were things like, and I'm like, I don't care. The guy is an absolute machine. I don't care how sad he is, how happy he is. Like, the guy is like, was instrumental to the Champions League 3P, scoring 50 goals a year. I'd take that trade any day of the week. All the drama, all the emotional baggage that comes with it, I'll take it. So I'm in the camp of like, I lean on the side of I would forgive everything. Just this guy's clear upgrade to our attack. I take him. The question of like this summer versus free next summer, I completely back Real Madrid in the idea of pushing all the money for him this summer for this reason. 1 year is a long time for him to change his mind to stay again. And next year is not actually free. All these transfer fees will be replaced. Like, my dad needs this. My mom needs a house. My dog needs a pool house. These are all the demands. These are all the agent fees. Bang, bang, bang. It's like 200 million right there anyway. And so I understand the rationale of trying to get him this summer.
I think the reason he's pushing for it, for what it's worth, is because he saw what happened from December to this June after the World Cup. After he scored that second volley in the final, or the third goal, right after that moment, when as soon as he stopped being a France player and went back to being a PSG player, his stock just stayed the same or just started dwindling. And then Erling Haaland just went from somebody to clearly, like, his stock just skyrocketed above Mbappe. So I think Mbappe, his motivation is like, all right, like I stayed for 1 year. You guys just screwed my legacy up more. That's it. Like, I don't care about signing bonus. Get me out of here. I'm going to say things in public that piss you off. And then in private, I'm going to come up to you and say, what? This is the deal we had. And I'm going to act like I don't know what you're talking about. That's the vibe I get. And I trust the club on both accounts. It's just, Kiyan, if he says he's coming next year and you don't want to negotiate with Harry Kane because you're scared he gets injured, and because you know if Harry Kane comes and gets injured, Saudi Arabia isn't going to come and buy all your players because they own a part of your club like Chelsea. That's the main difference here. We're not like Chelsea where we can go spend 500 million and just sell our players. It's really about resale value. And I don't think Mbappe's PR value is as high as I thought a few years ago. I grew up, looking up to someone like LeBron James, looking up to the way he did PR. And then in the last few years, I've learned, looking back, about how he's actually just made it all about himself in a way that maybe affects the club, that maybe takes away from the beauty of what he can achieve on a team. And so I see Mbappe doing the same. In fact, Ryan O'Hanlon wrote about it for ESPN. He said Mbappe is taking from the LeBron James and Kevin Durant playbook, where every summer they want everybody to talk about them and where they're going. I hate that stuff for sure. I don't like it because, there's a point when it gets old, when you're not adding more value to the conversation and when the conversation is adding a little too much to you. That's where I think Mbappe is at now, for sure. I don't like it at all. But the game is the game. You either play it or somebody else plays it for you. And I understand why he chooses to control the narrative that way. I understand why we're in this dilemma. But if we go into the season without, that's why I actually should say right now, I don't expect us to go into the season without Mbappe. The more I look at it, like, if we go into the season without Mbappe, you're risking Xavi's Barcelona winning a second straight La Liga. The same Xavi's Barcelona that wasted money for years, mortgaged their media company, and is beating us to La Liga because their coach actually pays attention to what happens on the training ground. And I just think that's the scenario we can't allow. If Barcelona cannot win, they don't have a six anymore. They have Ilkay Gundogan, Frankie de Jong, Gavi, and Pedri, 4 great players who can't play six. But watch, the league's going to start and they're going to milk out those 1-0, 2-0 wins. And we're going to be losing. We're going to finish with 80 points, even though we have the youngest star at every position but striker. That's not viable. And that's why I'm skeptical we don't sign him. I'm quite skeptical at this point. Like, that's where his whole move seemed like he wanted us to sign him immediately. And I'm skeptical he wants to spend an year watching Haaland play better than him.
Yeah, but the barrier is not us. The barrier is things are out of our control. Like, that's what I think is the challenge. Obviously, if it's in Real Madrid's power, he's a Real Madrid player. But
isn't it embarrassing that we also have such a stacked squad, but like if we don't sign Mbappe, we take it for granted that Xavi's going to outcoach us in the league? Like, Ali, if you swap midfields, Barcelona finish with like 200 points in La Liga, man.
I mean, one of the reasons the rebuild doesn't feel like it's over is Ancelotti, right? Like, I think the mark of the new era, I think, will be a different coach, and I think he's expiring next year, and a lot of reporting on him leaving. And he's a good coach, he's a top coach, but I think he knew what job he was getting into, which was a rebuild, right? And he's done a good job for what it was. But I think, fresh blood, fresh ideas is sometimes needed. If you swap midfields, I agree with that statement.
Well, it's also, I mean, with all the money going around, like, if you can recruit the best midfielder at every position, but if your opposition can mortgage their future and get like an approximation of that while getting a way better coach, you lose. Like Arsenal, like they have a much better coach. Like Kai Havertz, honestly, would have sucked for Real, but that same money on Arsenal, he's going to pay back way more of that fee just because of the coach.
And we talked a little about this prior to recording, right? Like, the edge is moving away from finding good players and going more to, can you make the player good? Can you take a player that other people don't think is that good and make them very good, right? So that's I think we've seen a lot of the Guardiola weirdness this year with the 4 center backs and all of that stuff. We've seen the top coaches like innovate and push things forward.
This
isn't a Guardiola thing at all. This is just like good coaches figure out solutions and with their squads, right? And I don't think it's interesting. I don't know the club knows a lot more about the Mbappe situation than us, right? And so they have a lot more information when it's specific. I think for me, when it's in the more broad terms, this idea of a 10 out of 10 transfer or a 7, it's gotten you great results, but I think some flexibility might have been needed to bridge the gap with someone better than a Joselu or whatever, to bridge the gap with I don't know what's out there, a Dzeko, Giroud type player that is, I guess that's the same, maybe not quite the same level, but like the same profile, but a level above. And you spend a little more money or you take a little more risk, because everywhere else you haven't taken risk. And I know Hazard is still fresh on everyone's mind, but like, you can make mistakes, right? You can't be afraid of making mistakes. No transfer process will bat 100.
No, definitely not. It doesn't exist. I mean, there's no perfect track record. No front office has a perfect track record. I think Real Madrid have done really well. Generally speaking, I think they've gotten more right than they've gotten wrong. It is interesting. I mean, to reflect, they've erred on conservatism and pragmatism. When Ronaldo left, they took a leap of faith that Bale, Asensio, Benzema would take a leap themselves. Only Benzema did, unfortunately, at that juncture. They took a bit of a gamble with Hazard. That one was obviously the biggest. I mean, that Matt and I were doing a podcast last night where we went back through like every summer the past 5 years. That 2018 summer was insane, a disaster for everyone, because Real Madrid had their 2 worst signings of all time in one summer, Jovic and Hazard. And then you look at that entire summer, it was João Felix and then Antoine Griezmann to Barca for a lot of money, which made no sense. So I think this is the thing, going back to Mbappe. I guess the timeline is kind of fascinating to follow. And I think it kind of worries me a little bit, because at what juncture of the summer will you find out he is or isn't coming? And Real Madrid have not assigned the number 9 shirt yet, which tells me that somebody is coming if it's not him. And if Mbappe doesn't materialize, like with 2 days left in the transfer window, who's the 9 you're signing with 2 days left? You might just be promoting Alvaro Rodriguez from Castilla and giving him the 9. So just that the 9 is reserved for somebody, and I don't believe for a second that Jose Lu chose number 14. I don't believe that at all. I'm sure he would have loved to have the number 9, but obviously he's just not allowed to have it because he's just not maybe the player they want for that. So who that number 9 is, if it's on Mbappe, is another question. And at what point of the summer do you find out that you have to sign another person?
Yeah, and I just wonder at what point, like, just wanting to, I wonder at what point they will realize it's not working, is my honest opinion. I wonder if we're at a juncture where they think what they're doing is still going to keep them at the top. And I think so far, the performance almost every season since Ronaldo has been about on par with expectation. At what point do you go and realize, like, I'm signing the best player every summer, but that means winning the league like twice a decade? And I think that's going to be something we realize more and more. But you can also see that the rumor is the coach they want to replace Ancelotti with is our closest response to the Artetas and Xavis and Guardiolas of the world, which is Xabi Alonso, in my opinion. Even more than Zinedine Zidane in terms of footballing education. What we've seen at Leverkusen has been phenomenal. And the rumor is they want to replace Carlo with him. And even before Xabi Alonso, they were looking at Mauricio Pochettino, who is also a very good response to this wave of top coaches who come and mold players. So in that sense, maybe we're sitting here a year later with Mbappe and Alonso, a team that's playing sweet one-touch footy, build-up play, pressing, everything, and we're like, wow, what were we worried about? But I think that's probably the direction they're going. It's just, we see Chelsea making like 300 million of mistakes and then Saudi Arabia bailing them out for 150 million. And immediately every club is like, can you even afford to make mistakes becomes the first question. Because if you can afford to make that type of mistake and Saudi Arabia takes your players off you and saves you from financial fair play, that's a different level of balling. And I guess we'll find out when it's Al Hilal versus Mbappe's Real Madrid in a couple of years in the Club World Cup final, which strategy worked.
Yeah, there is a gap between like never take risks and take some risks, right? And I do think it'll be interesting to think about, okay, if not Mbappe, it is a very tough strikers market, right? Like it is one of the harder positions to recruit for. I think both those attack positions with right wing and striker are difficult ones, I think.
How would you contrast Osimhen and Harry Kane on the market? Because this is something we've talked about before. Like Kane maybe fits more into systems where they're not catering to him, whereas Osimhen is the more typical run and go get it striker. What do you think? Because I see why you'd hesitate on both for different reasons.
Yeah, both have to put it mildly, like injury history. Even with the age gap, both have injury of like getting banged up a little. I'm a big Harry Kane guy. I know a lot of casuals are like Harry Kane is whatever. I cheer for Arsenal. I watch that guy. I hate that guy. He's extremely good at football and much more versatile than people give him credit for. And has been playing, I think, banged up for a few years now. And so like when it cleared up this year a little, you could see he was back to peak physical performance. Extremely different profiles, right? Like one guy's a passer, he'll drop deep, he's a great finisher. One guy's just probably like the best outlet in world football, just chase down everything and physically dominate people, and very skilled, very dribbly. It feels like the cleaner fit. It really depends on how you rate Vinicius' ceiling, right? Like the cleaner fit seems with Kane, in terms of like you could see that Kane-Son connection with Kane-Vinny. I think Kane is the thing I get the most from casuals is like Kane isn't a great passer. Kane is like an outstanding.
It's very, very. I hate casuals saying that, man.
No, I mean he's perfect. He's honestly perfect for Real Madrid. The way it's constructed right now, the biggest barriers are age and money. It's like in a vacuum, Harry Kane. It's perfect. It's a perfect Benzema replacement.
I would here's what I would do if I were them. Here's what I would do a little differently. I still don't think we have an answer at right wing. Like I don't I think that a lot more of my focus would be like finding a left-footed right winger or a right winger, like just depth there. I don't like the Fede line up there, and I know it works in some big games, but I just don't like it. And I don't see Rodrigo drifts in and he does good.
He doesn't like it there. He doesn't like it out there.
Doesn't seem like he's enjoying himself out there a lot of the time, and he's drifting. And Rodrigo's a difficult player. We have a lot of those where you're like, he's very intelligent but needs to play off some people, and like very good player, but like you don't. There's not an obvious. He's not obvious like first name on the team sheet kind of player, right? Especially at right wing. And so, I think what I would be doing is I would be trying to rebuild that right flank, because I don't think with Kylian Mbappe that right flank is good enough, even with a great striker. And I think you push you kind of kick the can down the road with the striker stuff. Fine, I do think you need a right back and a right wing, or at least like viable depth there. Whether that's I don't know what that who I mean the funniest part of this question is the answer is to buy from Barcelona, which is very difficult, right? Barcelona have 3 right wingers.
Did we lose Ali? Oh, he's back. You're back.
Barcelona have 3 right wingers that play the position. I think Rafinha, Dembele, and Ferran Torres is really a right winger masquerading as something else. All 3 of those, I think, would get minutes for Madrid. I wouldn't say like first name on team sheet kind of stuff, but I think they'd definitely get minutes. And they don't have room in Barcelona for all 3 of them. Obviously, that is a difficult buying decision, but there are other names out there in the market. I really like Ulisi from Palace, who's quite good. I think Arsenal have been linked with Diaby from Leverkusen, who is left-footed right winger. That's quite good, and I think he's played with the French national team.
There's also the new young guy, Arda Guller.
Yeah.
What do you think of him?
Yeah, I don't know if Madrid are like, I think, to be fair, they've taken project players before, right? Like the Vinny, Rodrigo, Endrick. I don't think that would be a horrible buy. Yeah, everything about him screams star. I don't know if he's a winger. I think he may end up in midfield more often and is like not but I haven't watched him enough, but everything screams from profile to statistical profile screams like worth the money for sure. I think his transfer fee is going to be somewhere like in the 20s or something.
Right.
But that's a project player, right? Like you're buying him and to see if maybe loaning him back out, seeing if he's there.
What do you think of one more player? Curious, what is Goncalo Ramos going to be like? We talk because Kane and Osimhen, fine. You have some flaws, some injury history. Is Goncalo Ramos more of a guarantee?
I don't like the price there a lot. He's a good player. It seems like they're holding out for like a big price. The striker market is hard, man. I'm a very big Colomwani guy. I know
really?
he's weird. He's a weird player, and
I just get Jovic vibes from him, where like wrong situation.
Man, I really like him. This is maybe personal preference. I like my strikers who can dribble, and his profile is like they took him to that World Cup. He didn't look scared. He played well. I know people remember the miss in the final, but that was a great save, and he's had a great year, and he has the track record for it. I really like him. I just feel
like he doesn't hold it up enough. I think honestly he's amazing in like all the non-box stuff. I just sometimes worry about his physical strength in the box, holding on.
He's a good finisher too, but yeah, I see you. He's a weird profile. He profiles like a Jesus or Isaac.
Yeah.
Who are kind of like dribbling down the wing a lot more than you would maybe like them to even. Who else has been? I think United are looking for strikers, so you could compare their list to yours. There's
the same with Openda, right? Maybe
there's Openda. There's Tony, who's banned for a little bit. Who's a good player. There's the Atalanta kid, who is I don't know how to pronounce his name. Holland or something.
Hoyland.
Yeah, he's big on people. I mean, Arsenal have someone they have to sell very soon. They have to sell a striker in the next 3 months for sure. And I would pick up on one of those young guys. And it's maybe not Madrid level, but like Balogun was, I think, 1 goal behind Mbappe last year, and he's 20 or 21, and he's very good. But those are, again, not your Real Madrid star signings types, but just building depth is my point. Like who's your backup right winger right now? It's Valverde or whatever, right? It's not.
I just wanted to like prepare the fan base for the 10% possibility that if Mbappe doesn't arrive, that Real Madrid will just give the 9 to Alvaro Rodriguez from Castilla and call it a day. And in part because one thing that I think they're thinking about is that, well, not only are we going to get Mbappe next summer, which again, like when I say that, it's like, you never know with this guy, like what's going to happen. You never know. But let's say if that's like on their mind, they're like, well, we also have Endrick coming next summer. And do we really want to invest in another striker, plus bring back Endrick, or plus bring in Endrick, plus we'll have Mbappe. That's three players we have to appease. Joselu, I think, was it a 2 year, or no? I guess it's a loan actually. It's not a transfer. So I think that's something they're thinking about. The right wing option is interesting, and I just kind of come to accept, Ali, that I think Real Madrid's build up play will be very left-sided heavy for like a decade, the next decade.
That's fine. I'm just saying, like, from a squad building perspective, some flexibility, a change of pace, right? Like someone on the bench who can change that. If you have a tactical option that you can play there, is preferably left-footed, can just give you minutes in a spot that's been a problem spot. And the same with the right back, right? Like that entire tilt of field we saw last year. We talked about our first podcast was what's wrong with Vinny this year, right? I think, and that's what's wrong with Vinny. It's the whole structure is like very left tilting, and the entire defensive plan is very knows that, and you do need some form of balance there, whether it's a right back that's very good and or a left wing or a right winger that's very good. I think I'd focus. See, I have a lot of empathy and sympathy for the plan. We're getting Mbappe next year. We have Endrick. We'll roll out Rodrigo and Joselu and Brahim Diaz if he's staying around, or whoever. Like we'll figure it out. He can play
right wing, by the way.
Brahim Diaz. Yeah, exactly. We'll figure it out. And next year we're going to be unstoppable. And none of our core stars are aging out, anyways. I like that. That's fine. I don't like throwing away years. I don't think it is throwing away years. I think we overrate, like, for league titles and stuff. Like you can get away with that and win a league maybe, but there's other holes in the squad, right? Like I think there's a right back hole, there's a left back hole, there's not a center back hole, but like there's not a clear pairing that anyone loves between Alaba, Rudiger, and Militao. They kind of.
But there are definitely many options either way, like with center back. Like, but I think that the right back one is important to me, because a lot of this discussion would get solved if we had a right back who could do something with those diagonal switches that come their way once. Like when Kroos and Vinny and Co are combining on the left side and Kroos pings that perfect ball. We need someone at the right back position who can actually do something with that and punish the defense. And Carvajal hasn't really been that person for like 5 years now. And so that's one position that I think has to be upgraded, that the club has just been wary to tinker with, because they have Vasquez and Carvajal under contract. One thing that is interesting that changed since our last podcast is that, about that Vinicius podcast, is that Rodrigo became a starter and he wasn't at that point. And that helped a lot. He didn't do it by providing symmetry, but he did it by kind of roaming around and providing someone who can drag players away, create space for Vinicius, and that was helpful. One thing that has been kind of floated around is that, well, if you can't get a striker, could you buy a right winger and put Rodrigo to false nine? And the way I think of it is, I think that only works if your right winger is someone who can score a lot of goals. And there's not many right wingers who do that, like apart from like a Mohamed Salah, who falls into the category of like, okay, older player who maybe is not at his peak anymore. Risky, perhaps. I do also think that there is a real scenario if you don't get another striker. I do wonder if Rodrigo will just start over Joselu. That's an option too. And then you put Bellingham, Vinicius, Rodrigo as kind of like your attacking three, even though it kind of doesn't really make sense on paper in a lot of ways. But then you just have your midfield behind them, and it's a very fluid build-up structure. But you don't really have that target. Joselu is great in the air. I think that's something that he provides that we don't have elsewhere in the squad.
I mean, symmetry is fine, right? Like
I never cared about symmetry. I don't know. Like some people really care about symmetry. I don't some of the greatest sides we've had in since the turn of the century have been completely asymmetrical.
No, for sure. You're more looking at like, I think it's profiles, right? Like every now and then you'll have the game where that left side isn't working. or et cetera, et cetera. What can you throw on there? What can you do? What are your solutions? What are the team's solutions? And Rodrigo has been he's been a good problem solver, to be honest. It's been a hard role for him. And like in another team, he would be just like playing left wing and enjoying himself, and we would be debating how good he is, and we'd figure out a lot more about him. It's been a weird role for him, but he seems like he's committed himself to it, and he's figuring it out. So yeah, symmetry. I don't care that much about symmetry. I do think. You do need some solutions now that Benzema is gone, right? Like, you just need solutions. You need things to throw at opposition defenses. And if it's not this year, sure, you can trot that lineup up. But I do think, in the same way Real have been hoarding midfield talent, they could do that with young winger talent, right? Like, there's no reason to not go out and get a young attacking winger prospect and get him some minutes this year to give you optionality, right, to next year or the year after. And and there's some good young ones out there for sure.
Well, I also think the other challenge with the right wing, and this is part of the reason why I think that Real Madrid won't sign a right winger, is because they'll need to find minutes for Fede and Jude Bellingham.
This is the midfield problem spilling over.
Yeah, exactly.
Midfield problem spilling over, and this is the Modric conversation as well, I guess.
Yeah, I actually want to go back to the Modric conversation. I feel like we didn't scrape the barrel on that one. I'm not really a controversial person at all, but by far the most controversial thing I said, was this video that went viral, was that I don't think Real Madrid should renew Modric. It's a bit blasphemous. This kind of goes back to your point earlier in the podcast where, talking about pivoting, earlier, but that you were referring to Mbappe, not the midfield, I don't think. But it's really, really complicated with Modric because he's Luka freaking Modric. And I know a lot of people are like, well, we have so many midfield options. I've always been a believer of two things. One, I think too much depth is actually a problem. It's not a good problem. Like, people are like, oh, it's a good problem. I actually think it's a bad problem sometimes. And the other thing is that I always like to just 1 year earlier rather than 1 year later say goodbye to your legends. I think what makes the Modric thing very, very complicated is that he is completely unique superstar, in that if anyone in football history has earned the right to keep renewing year after year, it's him. He is, and it's not just like hearsay, like he is de facto, and everyone within the club has said this, everyone I've spoken to has said this, he is such a humble person and an invaluable presence in the dressing room. He is not like a superstar like Cristiano Ronaldo or even Sergio Ramos, who would even think of putting 1 ounce of drama in there with his contract, or playing hardball with the club, or negotiating, or trying to make public stunts. He is an absolute consummate professional, and he's still really good, and he takes care of himself. And I think that's really tricky because
it's extra tricky when you have the same coach, right? Like, you guys watch a lot more Madrid than I do, probably. If the coach will lean on them when it's not a meritocracy, it becomes really tricky, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's fine. It's fine if he sticks around and he gets his minutes and whatever those minutes are, and he can swing a game or 2 or 5 or 10, and he's still quite good by all accounts and metrics. But if he's blocking long-term talent at the club, like frustrating long-term talent at the club, or if this leads to a Fede asking out next year, or Camavinga frustrated mid-season, etc. We spoke in January about the need to play the kids more, and Camavinga and Tchouameni specifically. I think Tchouameni had a little burnout post World Cup. You miss a penalty in the final of a mid-season World Cup. That can happen, but by all accounts, I think some of the stuff we said there was turned out to be correct. Like Camavinga needs to be on the pitch, full stop. Right? I think, and so I think Bellingham will prove to be the same. And he's, as far as I remember, he's proven quite fit and not very injury prone. And so there is. I agree with you completely. We were just arguing about this in the company Slack around Rice to City. Like, is there such a thing as too many good players on one team? Like, you don't. You need a hierarchy. You have minutes. People get upset. It's like players want to play. That's the one thing. If you're around these athletes, everyone just wants to play. That's the most thing they care about. And it's very difficult to maintain order. Like City and Guardiola and all of them, they've done a good job, because knowing what we know, like 2 years ago, 6 of those teams asked out because they just wanted more minutes. Right? It was Jesus, Zinchenko, Bernardo, Sterling.
A bunch of them are about, like, Bernardo was about to leave. Like, he may still leave after winning. Ilkay is about to leave. Kyle Walker is leaving. It's crazy.
It's very hard. It is a good, quote unquote, good problem to have, but it is hard. And so you're looking at what? Tchouameni, Camavinga, Modric, Kroos, Fede. Who am I missing?
Ceballos, Bellingham. It's like
Bellingham.
7 players.
That's 7 players. Yeah.
So, and that's why, like, just think about it. Like last year, this was really hard to juggle.
You added Bellingham.
We kept everybody, every single person renewed, Ceballos, Modric, Kroos, and then we added Bellingham. And that's why I think Bellingham and Fede are just going to be considered attacking midfielders next season, like a third attacker. I think it's the only way to fit everybody in. And that's why I think the club's not rushing to buy another winger. Plus, you have Brahim Diaz thrown in there. I know, like, Brahim Diaz is not a big name, but he is a player who was starting every single game for AC Milan. Like,
he's a Champions League quality player. Yeah.
He's a good squad player.
My most blasphemous mistake, the one I get the most heat from, especially from my Spanish friends, is Fede. I get it. Every club needs a guy who can run forever and is on low wages and is a good professional and a good footballer by all accounts. But like, if as your 7th guy, I think I would consider selling one of those, and I think he has the most ROI from a sale perspective. Like, I think you can replace that skill set a little. I know
I'm starting to see that. I'm starting to see that.
Coaches. Look, I'm an outsider. Coaches love guys who work their ass off and don't miss games, and he seems like a model professional, and I can't quantify that stuff from the outside. But yeah,
he was a little bit poor after the World Cup too. So like his second half of the season wasn't great. So he became a little bit mortal after an insane, like, that streak he had in the fall where he was scoring from the right wing and
outrageous goals every other week. Yeah.
I don't think it's a permanent dip in form. I think he's a great player, but I guess I'll just ask you this question, because this is an interesting question. Let's say if everyone was playing in their best position with all these midfielders, who do you think is actually without worrying about like some players getting their feelings hurt or whatever, what is like the best midfield 3 you can put together with these 3, these 7 midfielders?
Yeah, I think it's I guess this is, I'm a roundabout way of asking, is Camavinga, how do we feel about Camavinga at left back forever now? Is that the thing?
I don't like it as a permanent thing. I like it as like emergency. That's it.
Yeah, I haven't seen enough of that. I think my initial answer is 4 of those 3. Like, these are the 4 guys I'm considering for first team: Tchouameni, Camavinga, Kroos, Bellingham. And the Kroos versus Tchouameni versus like, whether to include Kroos there is an interesting conversation. I think he has a unique skill set of those 4, and like helps out with build up a lot and first phase responsibilities, and just does a lot of unique stuff that like, whether Kroos is there or not depends on whether Alaba is there or not, right? And like there's a lot of
Yeah.
cascading questions.
But Kroos's unique profile, I think, complements these midfielders, and that's why I actually have him in my starting lineup.
Yeah,
So that's what I would look at. I would actually look at Tchouaméni, Camavinga, Kroos, and Bellingham just in front of them. Is the way I would envision it.
Yeah, if you can fit four in there, yes. So those are my four. The question is if you get rid of one, are you getting rid of which are you getting rid of? And I think it's like I see games where Kroos doesn't play. I see games where Tchouaméni doesn't play and someone else plays the six, or whatever. It's really game dependent, obviously, and it depends on like again against pressing sides, etc. Kroos's passing and build up play is just ridiculous, right? Like you will need that level of technical security. Some people would argue you need it all the time. And then I would like to see more of. I am very, very high on Tchouaméni, and he had a rough second half, and he got injured a lot, and so it really also depends on that. I believe Carlo experimented a little with Kroos at the six last year, right? There was some
a little bit too much, in our opinion.
Yeah, some lightweight midfields happened.
I think Ceballos is underrated in this conversation too. I think honestly, most times we look at Kroos and say he has to start. But Ceballos is coming in and giving a different energy from the same.
He brings
position.
that profile too. Like
he does. That's stylistically, he has the kind of like
with more verve. I hate to say it, Tony. Like you're perfect at almost every aspect. But more verve.
I'm on the opposite end of that conversation.
But you're used to the Arsenal version of Ceballos. I feel the Real Madrid version of Ceballos is better.
He was quite good. He was quite good last year. He's always been very talented. I don't know. He takes too many touches for me. Kroos is just like I like the quickness. I like the quickness.
I hear you, but I think he's improved with that since the Arsenal loan.
He had a great. Again, all of these are all good players. They all deserve to play at the top level. This is trying to fit a team into this, and it doesn't feel like the fit is tremendous right now, right? From a midfield perspective, from an attack perspective, it feels like a collection of great football talent, and that can be sometimes good, but sometimes a little dangerous. I think a great example is I think I came on here in January and said Chelsea's business has been good over the summer. I know I get a lot of slack for that. Like, they bought good players. All the players they've bought are good football players. They can't play together. They don't know how to play together. They're missing.
Good thing they were owned by Saudi Arabia the whole time. Turns out
they're missing defensive midfielder. They're missing a striker. They're missing profiles that make a team look together, right? Like or make sense, and not like a FIFA team, right?
Well, that's how I feel about Barcelona too, signing Gundogan and not having Busquets right now, replacement for him. Would you say the same? Like, it's a very good FIFA team, very good FIFA midfield with Frankie deep in FIFA.
I'm very, very, very. Someone mentioned the age curve right in the beginning in Madrid. Like, I'm just very tired of Barcelona signing over 30-year-olds. Like, Gundogan is amazing. He's maybe.
I think he's going to do well for Barca. Like, I really do. He's a good signing.
No, I agree, but like, you can't have every single good signing be above 30, right? Like, at some point, you're right where you started 2 years. 2 years from now, you're right where you started or in a worse spot. No, he's a great player. I think they very clearly identified that every season when Pedri gets hurt for his 2-3 weeks or 4-6 weeks or whatever, the team just goes to shit.
Yeah.
And that's basically what happened every single season, over the last two, every single Xavi season.
Are you worried about Pedri's durability, like moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, he's played a lot of football. These guys, man, it's so crazy. I apologize. It's so crazy watching like the Champions League final, then turning on the TV like a week ago, and like some of them are playing the Nations League final. That is
it's too much.
It's like, what are we doing? Like Van Dijk's out there, and I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say with Pedri, my question is like Barcelona last 2 seasons. I thought the tactical evolution's been very fascinating. 2 seasons ago, I would argue they looked better in that 6-month stretch under Xavi for a lot of periods than a lot of last season, as far as just how they dominated opponents with Aubameyang and Ferran the first few months of Xavi when they beat everybody 4-0 for like 10 games in a row. That I thought they never achieved that actual apex, maybe for periods last season, but it wasn't consistent. And I think that's the fascinating tale for me, because Xavi has been on record many times saying, you know, when Guardiola came onto the scene, nobody pressed. So the style that he wanted to implement, I can't even do that right now because the way people press is more high octane. And I think the way Xavi's compensated last season was by having his own players run themselves into the ground. We saw a lot of good first halves when Pedri, Gavi would go and absolutely shut the door on an opponent, then come back in the second half absolutely dead because they use their legs. And how do you see that evolving? Because so far, Xavi hasn't shown an ability to slow the game down the way Guardiola has. And it hasn't been close. There's
been really no rhyme or rhythm to that Barcelona attack all year, right? Like, it's very direct, it's very vertical, and it's very, is this winger on form today? Yes, win easily. No, struggle and win off a set piece. Or it's really been...
And Cruyff is rolling in his grave.
Well, it's funny because the way people talk about Guardiola as well is so funny, right? Like the City tenure for me has been defined by, it's a defensive team. It's really quite boring to watch.
No, I thought the first 2 years were a very offensive team that he slowly turned defensive.
Yeah, well, he turned that team essentially from a very like a high flying team to a grinded out. They play 4 center back. They play 5 center backs some days, like by trade, and they score once, and then they're very risk averse, and people don't talk about Pep like that, and people don't talk about Xavi like that, right? Like it's a defensive
it's all team. Image. This image of what they are versus the reality is just completely.
Yeah, it's a extremely aggressive, pressing, man marking defensive team that have amazing athletes in the back four, and when those 4 guys have been fit, they've been very hard to beat, including against Madrid and the top teams. And when
plus Ter Stegen.
Yeah, plus Stegen, exactly. So Araujo, Stegen, Koundé, Christensen, and Balde, like four positive athletes. Stegen behind them. They've been very hard to beat when those 4 have played. And Pedri, right? Like they've been. That's kind of been like if those 6 names are on the team sheet, that team has played to
ridiculous level.
To a top level, to a properly scary level, like Bayern away last year, Madrid, I think.
Even elements of the City friendly, they said it was very close when they faced it. It didn't look like, looked like 2 teams on the same level, on the same pitch.
I've always thought, a lot of this is tied to Ansu and his injury. They don't know what they're doing up there, right? Like they don't. The profiles are all kind of the same. I find it fascinating that Xavi prefers Dembele to Rafinha. Rafinha can sometimes like slow things down. He's the only one that feels like he goes infield and he'll pick a pass sometimes, and Dembele is just chaos in a bottle, and it works a lot of the time. But like it's crazy.
Dembele has a higher ceiling to just destroy defensive lines, I think.
Yeah,
whereas he also has a low floor.
Exactly. It's funny that Xavi is like, fine, we'll just give it to Dembele 60 times a game, and we won't concede, and we will hope like one of those 60 goes into the net, right? Like it's been a weird team. It's a funny team. Pedri gives them a lot of shape and structure, and
insane. He's insane. I've never seen a player add so much structure to a random team, honestly. Even Cruz, Modric, Xavi, and Iniesta, they had way more structure around them. I just feel
he's been very, very, like, the people who watch a lot, I think, understand like what he means to that team, because without him, they are just kind of like, they're almost a FIFA team, right? Like they just like go up and down and run and tackle, and it's very it's chaotic, and they're very good. And so
but you still expect them to evolve. You expect evolution that you don't expect from Carlo. You expect like actual wrinkles.
Young coach, learning on the job. Gundogan is a capable Pedri replacement. Gundogan is insane.
I think the fun with him is you get to put 2 of him, Pedri and Gavi, on the field in any game, and that's just terrifying because they do look good with the 2-8s when they're both actually in the.
But from a like long-term perspective, just like and like I wasn't a fan of the Lewandowski signing. I'm like I can't do it anymore with like look again. You said something super insightful. Real Madrid have reacted to being the richest club in the world to the 6th richest, 7th richest, whatever, right? And they've reacted quickly to that, and they have a strategy, and they've kept to that strategy, and it's allowed them the room now to go make mistakes and go chase superstars and have a young team, and Barcelona have not reacted to that news of being no longer the 2nd richest or the 1st richest club in the world, and they've kind of kept spending their money like they can figure their way out of it. And Lewandowski was quite poor in the second half of that season. I don't know if
he was hurt. I'll give him
injury
6 months. I call him washed.
No, I'm not saying washed at all. I'm saying this is what happens when there's like a critical mass of we've talked about this a lot. Like you just go to the Premier League, go to the top teams. Like no one's not running, no one's not fit. Everyone's like they're just a bunch of. You look at Arsenal, you look at City, you watch United play, you watch. Everyone's just no one's 35 out there, and you can't carry teams at the top level. You can't carry a player.
35. Yeah, I agree. I'll give Lewandowski 3 months. 3 months into the season, and he's not looking good. I'm gonna start.
Look, he could score 50 goals. That doesn't make it a fantastic signing, right? Like it makes it an okay one. I think.
Well, they don't win the league without him last year, and they also don't. Without him, there's no icon on the team that makes La Liga more interesting. Like he brought a lot of eyes.
I'll take the marketing stuff, right? I don't know anything about the marketing stuff, and I will take the L on it every time. They don't win the league without him. I don't know, man. Aubameyang was banging in a goal a game. Like it wasn't like they were struggling. You know what I mean? Like they didn't score that many goals, did they? I think they were on track to beat La Liga's defensive record, and then they fell asleep the last 3 weeks.
Well, I guess I'm from what I remember, like first month you go and teams are defending really well, but this guy is just pouncing on a chance every game.
Sure, but they scored 70 goals, right? It's not like Real Madrid scored more. Atletico scored the same.
No, and he had his flaws too. Like it was obvious to me that at this stage of his career, he's only as good as the team. Like the team either maximizes him. Yeah, for sure. There's no doubt he's not able to. Like he will get you that 2 extra shots every game, but it's not something where he can win you games. I agree. Well, so you see all this happening, and you see Barcelona keep the coach good, and you see Real. Maybe they don't have the best coach, but they have the best talents. How many years until the best team in the world is from Saudi Arabia? Like until Saudi Arabia pull off what Man City did this year. This year, Man City, 16 years to go from random team to treble, and we own football. Like we're number one. And how many years do you see? Because they have more money, so it should technically shorten the distance, maybe a little bit.
Hey, look, man, the Saudi experiment hits close to home. I think about 60% of my high school class probably live there now. So like this is true in all industries. This is not a football thing. Like I think I genuinely like maybe 60-70% of my social circle have moved to Riyadh or to Jeddah or to Saudi Arabia to chase whatever, like architecture and consulting and a bunch of different jobs. How sustainable it is, I think it will come down to a few things, like how livable is the city? Are people enjoying themselves? Is this a one-time, right? Like you obviously the money is endless and they can keep doing this. But like in order for this to succeed, I think some of that will have to go into grassroots football and facilities and stuff like that. And some of it will have to be like, I enjoy living here. Because at some level, at some level, Lionel Messi can go anywhere and get a paycheck that's ridiculous. At some level, like you talk to these Uber stars, it's like, yeah, I kind of like living in Paris. You know what I mean? Like, by all accounts, Mbappe just likes being French and likes living in Paris. You know
Paris
what I mean?
is amazing.
It's not like.
Also, can't blame Messi for choosing South Beach over Riyadh.
Like Miami, right? Like that's hard. That's a hard.
Well, didn't they, correct me if I'm wrong, this is an ignorant question, I apologize, but didn't they change some rules for Ronaldo, like about living with
Sure.
girlfriends and stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, and this is true, by the way. This is that direction is they're changing these rules for non-Ronaldos as well. Like they're definitely that's the direction, right? Like the consultants are like, oh, we don't want to live here. Okay, what do you need?
Yeah.
We need
So
X, Y.
when is the first nightclub open in Riyadh? Because there's too many footballers. That'll be a game.
Look, this is actually a good question, right? Like this is the actual question that will dictate. Like people want to go out, they want to meet girls, they want to live in a nice city. You know what I mean? Like at some point, if your net worth is over half a bill, a dollar, the marginal value of a dollar goes down very quick.
Right.
And right. I think they're look I'll say this for them. They know this. Like I know for a fact that it was someone's job to convince Messi's wife and to like, you know what I mean? Like they know that this is a group decision, and it's about the lifestyle, and it's about the city, and it's not just about money and the football and all of that. And again, to their credit, that is a league that has always had fans and always had football. Like it's a good league. This is not like I saw 21st Club had something about it being like the 50th league before Cristiano and stuff. Like it's not a bad league. They win the Champions League, the Asian Champions League a bunch of times. They have 16 to 20 engaged fan bases.
Yeah, so, I think it's 5 years then. So 5 years then before they beat Pep Guardiola's Man City in the Club World Cup final. And
yeah, I don't know about 5 years, man. It took Pep like 20 years to finally.
The grassroots stuff is where
grassroots
stuff is like, okay, you can get a good, like, again, what are we talking about here? Have they? Who is they've signed one peak age player, right? Maybe like Ruben Neves or whatever. I think it's gonna take a lot longer than that, but
a lot longer. It's not. I think it may very well happen, but I think 5 years is way too.
Well, I just think if you're offering players 3 or 300 million and you're giving it more than 5 years, man, that I would want my return on my money. That's all. I would want it within 5 years.
It's just that you also have to factor in like cohesion and building an identity. Yeah. It's like that, all that stuff.
The lifeblood of football is always academy players and coaches, right? Like that's the pipeline, right? Like that's the actual
passion.
That's the pipeline. At the end of the day, I think there was a thing I saw on Twitter where like, I don't know, six top coaches are like from the Basque region right now, whether it's Arteta and Iraola and a bunch of like these coaches from like, let's say Spain to make it. And these coaches, look, it's very hard. It's very, very hard to beat a Real Madrid and a Barcelona pull. Like look at Barcelona. It's like horribly run. Big players will still go all the time, right?
They still have a lot of revenue coming in. They still have a lot of fans. I mean,
yeah.
Is there a future? Let me ask this: is there a future like 30 years from now, where it's Saturday morning, it's Clasico, and there's like a real like decision to be made? Do I want to watch Clasico or do I want to watch Al Hilal?
I'd say within a decade. I mean, I'm already wondering like when I'm watching my first Saudi Arabian game. I'm not going to watch it now because like there's nothing in it for me, but there will be soon. And
if Messi had gone there, it would have been crazy.
We've seen this.
Also, aren't Benzema and Kante on the same team? They're going to play Man City, right?
So yeah.
They're literally going to play Man City. We're going to be tuning in to our first Saudi Arabian team this year.
Look, we've seen a version of this, right? I keep saying this to everyone who will listen. No one, like, the Premier League is just in a different stratosphere.
Yeah.
But like my friends tune into Newcastle Brighton before they watch a Madrid game.
It's because it's better in many facets of the game. Genuinely, they're trying harder some weeks to win because
marketing is better. The football is great. The coaching is ridiculous. The money is ridiculous. You have I don't know, hotshot coach who's Rayo's coach, right? Going to the bottom team in the Premier League. You have Emery. Emery left a Champions League chase in La Liga.
And Lopetegui.
A really great team. Yeah.
To go to I think at the time like 15th place Aston Villa.
But there's just going to be a point when Saudi Arabia is doing more of this to La Liga, and I worry more for La Liga. I keep asking.
For sure. I guess that's my point. Like my point is like the Premier League has done this to La Liga already, right? Like and they don't have any of the drawbacks of the Saudi. Like they have the historic clubs and people used to like watching it, and the marketing was already all there. And the Premier League has done it in what? It started in '92. It's been 30 years, and now I can see a end to the dominance of England, right?
I don't see an end. I just see an expansion into this World League that they're all pushing, where they play in every country. Where
I look up at my Twitter account, and it's like Justin Kluivert is going to Bournemouth or whatever, right? And it's like, wow, that is something 6 years ago. If you had said, I wouldn't have believed, right? Like the 20th placed, the 17th placed Premier League team, and no offense to Bournemouth, good team, fun city, but like they're pulling real talent.
England's not that fun to be pulling that talent. It's not. It's a boring ass country.
London's pretty cool, man. London's pretty
Other
cool.
than London, man. London's like a little dot in the middle of that boring peninsula.
But my point is they've put La Liga in their shadow, right? Like imagine if Real hadn't won those crazy Champions Leagues over the last.
That's what I'm wondering. I'm like, if we didn't win 3 in a row, we're screwed.
Imagine if Courtois hadn't saved from Salah and Mane. We would be talking about dominance in a very different way right now, right? I'm saying last year is the main. I feel like last year almost like if the football gods had to script it, you script last year for Real to make people think La Liga is still relevant for another 10 years. When the reality is it's been losing strength for 5 years now. I think last year was perfect for creating the illusion of La Liga being a competitive league, when in reality it came against the run of play, it came against the run of money, it came against the run of tactics. And if you look at like the Conference League, and I've actually enjoyed those competitions, like and like the Conference League is like West Ham just go get their first title and like just go down the table and
yeah.
Other than the Sevilla dark magic in the Europa League as usual, it was like these English clubs, man, they're scary. I think the Champions League rules changed this season, if I'm not correct.
No, it starts next season. 2020.
Yeah, so basically, whoever's going to finish 5th this season in the Premier League will have above 50% shot to qualify for the Champions League, depending on the coefficient.
Yeah. So for 2025, it starts, I think. 2024, 2025 season.
24-25, the spot is given, but it's given on the basis of 23-24.
Yeah.
And so next year, it's 7-5, not 7-4. Like the top teams, like a Chelsea, a Newcastle, a Brighton, whatever, they're gonna make it. And the funny thing about that rule is, I think it's coefficient that year. So if they just have an off year, it could be like someone random. I think there was a year, like a couple of years ago, where the Dutch team would get a third team.
Yeah.
But the gap is only increasing, which means the rest of the world have to catch up. So a rest of world Super League, a rest of world. That could be possible. I think that is a more likely outcome than like Saudi
taking over. Yeah,
taking over. I think a rest of world Super League, a rest of world Europa League.
What are the chances that the Saudis would own that league?
Yeah, no. At the moment,
they would own the best teams. Like Chelsea and Newcastle will soon be. I think Chelsea and Newcastle will become better than Man City at some point, just due to financial muscle. If they can continue to spend more than Man City to make every single decision, then they will be better than Man City at some point.
I have another ignorant question. Is City's oil money not able to compete with Saudi? Like, is it just a different ball game?
Different tiers.
Completely different ball game.
So we're like talking like instead of 3 gazillion trillion, we're talking about 5 bazillion gillion. Like that's the difference. It's like it's still infinite, like basically, but it's money. Like another infinite level.
Yeah. It's if you compare it to football, that's where it gets. It feels infinite to football. If you just zoom out, there's nothing at the scale of. There's nothing at the scale of the Saudi investment, and it's a big country. Also, 30 million people. It's much bigger. It's just a bigger country in every just larger, not even bigger, and like it's just and so
I'm against it until they like come and buy our podcast. Until that point,
until they buy Fede Valverde for 150 million.
That's too low.
When he's old and when we want to move on, when he's a legend, and then they come and throw us 200 million. But
well, I don't know, for or against. It's not pretty, but it's never been pretty. It's never been pretty. Money always wins in sports, and it's never been that pretty.
I think when we talk about the idea of wealth, you look at Abu Dhabi and you look at Dubai. These are places that individuals have realized, sovereign entities that went and they built them up. You go to Dubai, it's a beautiful city. And I think to the Western world, it's a degree of architectural beauty that's not even achieved out here. And that's like a concept of money. But then you take Saudis, I see that, but I see something that can influence militaries, that it's like a different scale. It's like, because everything they do, if you go look at the numbers, it's always been like 10x whatever they put into Dubai. Like if they want to create a super city, the numbers are just a tier bigger. And I think ultimately Dubai and UAE, it's a very wealthy entity with a lot of power. But Saudi Arabia is more like a money printer. So like if they run out and like you're like, I'm not selling you, they can just hit print. And then when they hit print, they can offer you more, which is why N'Golo Kante is there. I wonder what they offered. They gave Leo a percentage of MLS profits, right? That's the only way they kept him there.
The reporting there has been pretty funny. I think they gave him the reporting there, again, not sure how accurate, but equity in Inter Miami, a percent of profits on the Apple MLS pass or whatever, like a bunch of different things to try to even out the offer. Yeah, and that I'm sure some of that is like just family driven. I think he has a house there already, and I think that has always been. I wonder how much the conspiracy theorist in me was like, he could come back in January and like go on loan to a Champions League team, right? Like that's the nice thing about MLS. They play summer league.
That's what Beckham did, right?
Yeah, that is what Beckham did. People haven't been talking about this. Like Messi,
that's what Lampard did too. He played for City, and he scored City. The equalizer against Chelsea, Mourinho's Chelsea.
So I know no one's reported this or anything, and I don't know if he has room for that. But I
don't think he does. That's why no one's talking about it. I think
I do see a like, hey, I think I don't know if he cares. I think he's 8 goals away from Cristiano's Champions League record.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
I think he cares.
I don't see why he should finish that. I think he should get number 6 and he should finish top of that. Like right now, his resume is like, okay, you proved to everyone that Ronaldo was this wannabe who shouldn't have been in the GOAT conversation with your World Cup, even though he's better than everyone else and he earned his place in the discussion. But now it doesn't sit right. It's like Jordan. If Jordan had less rings than LeBron and Kareem, I don't know.
Well,
it doesn't make
Jordan doesn't have the. Like LeBron has surpassed all of the points that statistically speaking, he surpassed it. But MJ is still the GOAT to me. But I do wonder, like, because like money, it's very obvious money talks right now, and it always has really. But
he also has nothing.
What's that?
He has nothing to prove. I think like the whole LeBron Jordan thing, you could make arguments, but with Messi, like. The entire argument is rooted in not looking at how much better he was when you just see the pitch. Like all the arguments about Messi not being the best are things like, hey, look, Ronaldo is the top Champions League goal scorer, which is cool until you watch the film. And then you realize that doesn't mean anything. That's just words. Like he's not a better player.
I don't think we can possibly get into this now, like 2 hours in the podcast, but I have some at least counter arguments that maybe we can entertain to that, but we can't get into it now. It's impossible. There's no way. But I do wonder, like the Super League collapsed because of PR, really. That's one. But the other main reason was the Premier League doesn't need the Super League. You know, Real Madrid and Barca needed it.
That is the biggest reason.
That's the biggest reason.
The collapsed is the English clubs looked at this and were like, and obviously under duress from their fans and stuff, but like, okay, it doesn't actually move. Like we're already ahead and we're not getting caught up here, I think.
Yeah. I wonder how much that would change if like the Saudis came in and were like, let's try this again. But we own the Super League.
Yeah,
and
Spain
here are the teams. You guys are the teams. Real, Barca, you're in. We all just turn this into like basically the UFC of the sport, the NBA of the sport. This is the league. No one's watching anything else. Inter Miami's in it. We're all in it. Like, we just like there's teams from Saudi, there's teams from Spain, and is that a realistic future? I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it's super globalized. Super globalized is coming. No matter how you spin it, there's going to be some league where teams from different regions play each other. I think that's inevitable. I just think the single stuff is ending.
I agree with that. I think people are bored of the team I grew up down the street from. Just won their fourth Champions League in 6 years. In Cairo here, I probably am butchering that. They had, I don't know, 6 finals in 7 years, something crazy. It gets boring.
You need to reach the top of the world at some point. Forget this one league where you have to asterisk everything. Oh, you won 6 and 7.
Boring, right?
Like, let's have a world competition right now. I'm excited for that too. That's why I hate the whole. I don't like the idea of the Premier League. I admit now the Premier League is the hardest competition to win, not the Champions League. I hate to say it, but it's the hardest competition to win. And I hate how not everyone participates. I think if you're going to have a competition that crowns the winner of the world, everyone needs to have a chance. Everyone needs to be able to roll their dice. It needs to be international. You can't have a lot of money in one league and then not let an outsider. Like tomorrow, I should be able to go form a team. If I win a league, I should be able to keep progressing till I face Man City. And I think that's where we're headed, where by decentralizing it, by letting a kid in Saudi Arabia, a kid in Japan dream, like with his friends, hey, let's go win it. That's how the sport expands, I think. And that's why I think it's inevitable.
The global stuff is fun. It's hard to talk about all of this without getting too political, and it's a difficult conversation for everyone. And the money stuff has always been there. I think it's funny watching people catch up to a lot of it in real time with some of the. Look, this is like it's the same in the financial industry, whatever. It's like, oh, this holding, you don't know the interests, right? Like this holding company and this holding company, and you don't know the shareholders here and there, and so it's very difficult to parse. But I do think there are some positives. I know most people feel quite negatively about the politics and the PR of all of this. I do think there are positives in terms of a more global game, and in terms of like whether it's Asian football, South America, like hopefully some of that money goes back into grassroots and into developing good players and into developing good coaches. I think good coaches is, again, academy players and coaches kind of like the actual lifeblood of the sport, right? And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I know I've been very openly like talking about, if I ran the Egyptian Federation, I would probably create like a North African league and just play like the Moroccans and Tunisians and Algerians all the time. And those would be way more entertaining matches. And I think, I believe it was the Dutch league who explored that with the Belgian league for a little bit. Because the Dutch league, I believe, like second division Netherlands, I think IXB win that every year, which is not great. And so we're trying to find the balance between competitive, we like things to be competitive, but we also like the super teams, and we like the players ganging up together and having impossible to beat teams and stuff. So there's a balance there that I think is tricky for football, and I think it's starting to skew a little bit too much towards Europe, England for sure, and we do need. It's funny how the Real and Barca are now the little guys.
It's so funny. I cannot believe
it's funny how quickly that's happened too. It's been so quick. It's been so quick, right? Like it's been, what was City takeover 08?
Yeah, I mean, it was like yesterday when
Abramovich
Barca was the Clasico was big and City was a joke. Pep wasn't there yet. He was at Bayern like 2015.
Abramovich was 04, I think, or Chelsea 03 maybe. So basically it's the Premier League era, right? Like 92 on. And they've kind of kept climbing the ladder, and it's crazy. It's crazy to watch.
It did take time though, and that's why I was skeptical when Sid said 5 years. Like it did take the Premier League a long time.
So here's my bet in all that. It's the fact that Gundogan signing for Man City today, he signed for something that happened 10 years ago. Because of matches that happened 10 years ago that he watched a few times as a kid, he signed for Barcelona, and that imprint created, like I saw a video the other day of Mourinho's press conference, making fun of Guardiola and Barcelona's Champions League. And I'm like, that cinema, it capsulated so many people. I just don't think we can take how many people like took interest in the sport, got interested in the sport because of what happened those few years. Those feuds, they transcended football. What actually the emotions that were being conveyed during the Mourinho and Guardiola years were of war. You got people interested in conflict coming into sports to find out why is everyone so upset over this one big thing. And I think that hatred, that emotion that they achieved those years is going to keep Madrid and Barca around. But I think if you do, Liverpool City didn't get there for me. They never hated each other enough at the peak to really get those emotions. But if you build a rivalry where you take the best coaches, best players, example, today would be like if you put like Pep's Man City in a league, and then you had an enemy, which was Mbappe and Arteta, maybe. And maybe if they had press conferences where they're actually insulting and hating each other, if you actually had a story where it divided a national team, that's popcorn, man. That's cinema. That's TV shows. Like, that's Game of Thrones right there. And I think that level of intensity of emotion is just not easy to capture. But that's why I also think it can be done. If you tell that story again in any league in that way, where two super teams go head to head, it's almost myth building more than the sport. It's like you're not just playing the games, you're building a myth. And I think that's what Mourinho did really well. I think in many ways the Premier League is searching for more characters to fully shift it away from La Liga. And that's why Gundogan joined, because he wants to be part of one of those great Barcelona midfields in his head. Like, if we're being honest, Barcelona, they don't have money to build those midfields anymore. They're not going to build those teams. But in his head, they are Barcelona. They're the team of Xavi and Busquets and Iniesta. He has to go and build the church of football from scratch again, right?
As a very biased Arsenal fan, the best outcome for a neutral would be Mbappe to Arsenal, right? That would be the funnest. It would be, though. It would be the funnest. Go head to head with Haaland, the team that drove them closest. It's the team that if money didn't exist, we're playing Football Manager here, right, or whatever. You would pick. That's what you would pick, right? Like if money didn't, or Liverpool or whatever, right? Like try to revive Klopp, Pep, or whatever. Like if this were actually a script and we were writing it, I think those two would rival Madrid for that signing, right? Because I think like the Madrid don't have like Mbappe alone doesn't change the Madrid-Barca dynamic, right? So one team gets a little better and the other team is still kind of old and a little broke. But sure, it'll be fun and it'll play to like their original fan bases. But could you imagine a world in which, again, if money were no object, where would you go if you were Kylian? What's the football project you would choose? And I think it's something like a Liverpool or an Arsenal.
Well, I think bias reasons aside, I think the Real Madrid appeal is also the PR machine and the Ballon d'Or perspective. Yeah. And I think I will say this, like, I think it's interesting to think about the fact that Real Madrid and Barcelona will never be on the level of the new money because they're publicly owned. They will never have a rich investor come in and buy the club. It's impossible. Unless that's where
I don't agree that they're going to stay. That's where I see it changing too. I don't think they stay publicly owned forever.
That's the day I'm probably done with this whole thing. If Real Madrid ever gets sold, I'll be devastated because
as if we're not like state backed in the 50s with Franco in our dressing room. Like, come on, like that's where I don't see this new money as anything new to like. All big money has been run by shady governments and militaries with black box budgets. It's always been the case. Real is just like a very public way of convincing ourselves that the 100 million going to Bale came from some organic, authentic thing. But I still think Real is very much an orchestration of a government. Like, it's a cultural force. Franco needed a cultural force on his behalf. I don't see Real as like, we saw the Negreira incidents, and there's a lot about Real. I guess like Barcelona are doing us a favor by, getting in trouble more. But I think like there's a tendency as fans for us to support teams and completely ignore exactly how dirty the money that formed these teams was until some new money comes into the sport. Then we're like, oh, that's dirtier than what we have here. But what if it's always been dirty? And what if that's okay? What if the goal is to grow the game because the game is a healthy thing for society? Anyways.
I'm not looking at it from that perspective of clean money and dirty money. I'm looking at the fact that like I think there's a huge benefit to being publicly owned because I look at the situation of like Valencia with an owner that does not give a shit about that team and is running that historical team into the ground. I think the benefit of the publicly owned aspect is that you can vote an incompetent leader out of the club. Like Valencia fans are powerless because they can't do anything to get him out of there to save their club. Whereas I think with, there's like a real say in decisions that are being made by a lot of people. I think that helps. I'm looking at it from that aspect too. I'm not.
It's an age-old argument, right? Like how centralized, decentralized. It's a private company versus a public. It's almost anagram of that, right? Like anagram is the wrong word. Like private versus publicly held companies as well. It's the same problem, right? Like conceptually speaking, public companies are you can vote out a bad CEO, or the stock market votes out a bad CEO or whatever, right? And private is different, and both have their pros and cons, and I think we're seeing that play out to a degree in some of these areas. It has not been great for the public-run companies / football clubs for the last 10 years, and some of that is market distortion of new money that is sizably bigger than the size of investment they can afford. And but some of that is just, even before the new money, I think the Premier League was somewhat on the rise from a marketing perspective, and like they know
it's the color of the grass, the way the broadcast sounds.
The broadcast
it just looks better. It can't explain it. Just the picture is better. Like I don't know if they have like a special.
That's a great explanation. It just looks better. I don't know
it's on purpose. They color graded. That's where I get pissed at La Liga, and La Liga does it some games. The Clásicos most notably, very green. If you remember the Clásicos, they had the close-ups of Modric, Benzema walking to the bench wearing their jacket this year, and I'm like, finally, you do it for the game. If 700 million people are watching, but average La Liga game doesn't compare. It reminds me a bit of the NFL in America, where they just learned how to productize their physical nature of their product into like, come watch this sport where everyone's going head to head, clashing. It feels very much like the NFL. And whereas when I think of La Liga, I think of like Real are going to pick up the ball, build up against some deep block. Barcelona are going to pick up the ball. And I think of all the weird Cruyffian fanatics who are going to go and laugh it all up. But it's not the same appeal as the raw energy of the Premier League. And I don't get what La Liga is doing, honestly. You got to make it look better. You got to make it feel more intense.
And in a weird way, the Premier League have fairer TV revenue being split up, and so it's more sustainable for these smaller clubs to keep climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing, and with some investment, obviously, but
they figured out sharing the wealth is smart. Like before that,
exactly, it's more a meritocracy. So you want to if someone succeeds, you want to reward them, and you want them to get better players. Like we have this great Brighton project nowadays. They're going to buy some cool. They have money. They have real pull. People don't understand Brighton. Brighton could rival Atletico. Like Brighton could blow out Atletico.
They're better now because your stock goes up when you go to Brighton. When you go to Atletico,
it's like exactly. If you're a footballer and like we're competing for the same player, they would just blow them out the water, money wise and football wise, right? Like, and that's crazy. That's a recent phenomenon, right? Like if 6 years ago, if I told you Brighton and Atletico are fighting for a player, you would have laughed a little bit, right? Like,
or look at it this way. Right now, it's more lucrative to get a chance to get promoted from the championship than to be on a lot of teams in a lot of leagues. Like the bottom half of a lot of leagues, like you could risk going down. Championship, you could go up. That's just like life-changing money. And that championship game gets more and more interesting every year. It's crazy.
So all my like super grassroots friends will swear that it's the best league in the world. But just like the chaos, the energy.
Ali has convinced me this last year that the championship is great. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it genuinely sounds more interesting than like Levante versus Deportivo or whatever. Like I don't care. I want to see going head to head for.
There's a chaos and energy to it that is like we can see it when we're watching. It's actually just entertaining.
The quality is almost even, I would say, to Levante, Depor. Depor are, I think.
Depor are like in 10th division at this point. They're just terrible. But
third division lost a thriller in the playoffs last week.
You know what would be fun? Real Madrid Castilla versus a championship team. How much?
We'd get rocked. We'd get rocked.
like 10-0 or something.
Oh no, not close. That's not close. That's not fun at all.
I mean, we couldn't even get to the Spain Segunda division, but
people underestimate the quality of like your average. I mean, people are starting to realize now that these teams come up and they stay up, right? Like your Brentfords, your
exactly. You can't come up if you're not going to be good enough to stay. And that's the part people miss. Like the teams that get bumped down are the teams that have been in the Premier League for a couple of years too. You'd say.
And this year the Championship have three huge clubs went down, right? With Southampton, pretty big club, and who was it? Leicester and Leeds. Those are three. That's a Premier League champion 10 years ago down there.
Right. Like if you remember 6 years ago, you could pretty much bring on Rafa Benitez to a relegated team, and he beat Tottenham 5-1 the last day, and then he brings them back the next year. This year, if you take a relegated team and bring on Rafa Benitez, you're probably not coming back up, which is crazy.
The level of coaching. I think the Bournemouth fans were upset on Twitter that they fired their coach and he kept them up, and then they hired Iraola, who I don't know if you guys have seen Raul play a lot, but he seems to be quite in demand and a modern.
It's fun. It's fun football. Yeah,
it's fun football, and it's like wow, right? That's the pull. The Premier, like someone said this best on Twitter: if you're a Premier League team, you should have a top 30 coach in the world. That's a fact. You should have a top 30 coach in the world. There are 10 jobs outside of you that are attractive. Like there are only 10 jobs in the world that are more attractive than a Bournemouth right now. From money you get in the league, you get your name known, etc., etc. And that's crazy. And maybe the Saudi money changes that, maybe not. But that is great.
Real Madrid still has enough pull to take Ancelotti from Everton, so that's good news. We got that. Also,
it's just the off-field talent.
I think we should be noted that Real Madrid doing a good job to collaborate with the only person who can compete with Saudi money right now, which is Taylor Swift. And having a Taylor Swift concert next year in the Bernabeu is super exciting to me. Like more than any like Classico schedule or anything, like Taylor Swift at the Bernabeu. Hey, they're doing everything they can from like a publicly owned company, like the stadium renovations, the events, like they're planning on having UFC events and all that stuff. Like they're doing what they can.
It's a big brand, and they're doing a good job. They've rebuilt that team very, very well. I'm very excited to see Bellingham play. And I don't think the striker thing is... I could see a world they win without a striker. Maybe not.
It's just hard to see that world under Carlo, but I hear it. Like, Pep is our coach, sure. It's like 2021 Man City, you just go with the false nine, you reach the Champions League final, and then you worry about signing a striker in 1 or 2 years. Because if you see, City pulled it off just the way... What we're trying to do now, City did. They reached the final and won the Premier League because their coach could adapt with the false nine. Everyone's like, they're going to sign Haaland this summer. They didn't. They won the Premier League again, and then they signed Haaland, and then it worked. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. I just think this whole brain drain we're seeing, and I'll just say, like, firsthand, tomorrow, if these teams come up to me, there was a point when maybe I want to go to Madrid, Barca, but it affects, like, how people, like, data engineers, like, they're not going to go and see Real saving money for Mbappe and say, fine, I'll take a pay cut to come work for you. Screw that. Like, if Bournemouth or Saudi are offering me more, technical expertise is rare, buddy. Like, you're not getting that on a discount. Nobody's getting that on a discount. You have to pay people more than they earned at their last stop and keep letting them progress. And if Bournemouth is going to do that better than Real, it's over. Lights out for Real one day. I just think, like, ultimately that there are larger forces that shape sports far beyond what we see. It's not just the players or the money. It's where is the brain going? And if the brains are going somewhere else, it's just over. Like, you cannot compete after a point. Like, at some point, the guy at Real who knows to say Bellingham is the best player, we should go after him, he's going to get snapped up by someone else.
As long as we keep Judy Califat, we'll be fine. The moment we lose him.
That's what I'm curious to see. Honestly, if I'm Junie, I'm just curious, like, what are they paying this guy? Like, Saudi should just go offer him more. Like, just go. If I'm Saudi, I try and pretty much rip off the Real brain trust the way City did. That's what I'm seeing right now. Like, somebody should come and buy the entire Real Madrid backroom, all of Florentino's buddies, all of his secret agents who go and talk to Vinicius and Rodrigo and Endrick.
Including this podcast. Take us too. Hey,
I'm down, Saudi. Like, if you guys pay 10 more than Real, like, Al Ittihad, let's go.
All right, I think we got
Managing Al Ittihad.
Never say never, man. I gotta wrap it up here, guys. We all gotta, I think, go do some work. And this was hit the 2 hour mark, I think.
Yep.
Did.
We said
Yeah.
75 minutes, but it hit 120.
Yeah. And 120? Jeez. Okay. All right. Well, this will be up at some point tonight. Ali, thank you. Sid, thank you. This was fun. Look forward to our next chat.
This
And
guy, enjoy silly season. Enjoy the transfer rumors. Take a break from football. There's too much football, so
yeah,
take a nice, well-deserved break, and we'll see you when the season starts.
awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Take care. Peace. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. And before we sign off here, we wanted to give a quick shout out to our patrons over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. It's been an absolute honor getting to know you guys and seeing this Real Madrid family grow, and you guys are a big part of it, and we wanted to thank you. And we also wanted to give a shout out to our $10 plus patrons specifically, because if you pledge $10 or more, not only do you get access to our entire back catalog, plus guaranteed responses to all of your questions, but you also get a specific shout out on the podcast. So shout out to these $10 plus patrons as follows: Brandon Alvarez, Willie Reed, Will Sousa, Wei Paring, Wamik Jamal, Tobias Royo Botcher, Tahmid Kalam, Sushank Damala, Sujai Wani, Sumanchu Singh, Sheikh Hatiri, Sergio Arispe, Santos Solorzano, Samuli Justin, Samer Z, Sai Mohan, Sasi Kumar, Rodrigo Balmaceda, Rishi D, Phoenix, Peter Powell, Paulo Fierro, Patrick Diafari, Oscar Barrera, Omar Barawani, Nico Laxo, Nicholas Moeller, Nick Ribeiro, Nelson Masariego, Naveen Babu, Ramesh Babu, Mowgli, MJ Diego, Michael Zinberg, Marin Myrtle, Matthew Atkins, Martin Ridman, Magnus Lext, Logan Stahl, Leon Stavronakis, Kunal Tilakar, Crystal Glass, Kevin Rivera, Jose Osorio, John Fernandez, Jeff Soa, Jason Fitz, Jacob P, Ian Marley, Howard Moore, Graham Gerard, Gary Kohut, Frederick Rantakiro, Frederick Sundros, S.A. Davisito, Ernesto Gutierrez Vargas, Eloy Enriquez, Edward Sossman, Daniel Williams, Connor McMorrow, Christian Toft, Krishna Costa, Brendan Powers, Brandon Stevens, Arnab Mukherjee, Armand Gashi, Armando L, Anthony Tharp, Anirudh Singh, Andres Silvestre, Ananya Kumar, Alex Steiberg, Azaz Hussein, Adrian Rios, Adar Zalukovic, Adam Dorsey, Bella Chow, Varun, Ramtin Mahrur, Fabian Moreno, and Daniel Smith. You guys rock. Thank you so much. And Hala Madrid.